Hello learners, welcome to another studio. This is live e-Vidya program for environmental science at senior secondary level. I am Neelam Gupta. Welcome you all in this program. Learners, in our previous program we have discussed about how our earth came in existence and what conditions were available for the survival of life on our earth planet. And we have also discussed about how humans have been interacting with the environment. Soon they embarked on manufacturing activities and industrialization began thus. So rapid expansion of industrialization has resulted in depletion of natural resources and pollution to the environment. So the very survival of human is not being threatened as now because of environmental degradation. A simple change in the environment can have a profound effect on all living beings. The destruction of one species means the death of many other species. So we cannot contribute to harm our environment due to a poor understanding of ecology. So we can take examples that humans continue to destroy wildlife in order to build cities and industries for their survival. So we introduce contaminant into the environment and also we deplete non-renewable resources such as fossil fuels. So, if this behavior is unchanged, so could someday render the earth inhabitable, which we feel right now. Thankfully, here an opportunity to better understand ecology. If you study organisms and starts with things that are more easy, basic, so you will develop a deeper understanding of things when they become more complex. Understanding of animals is also essential to our survival since we rely heavily on animals for food and clothing and many other things. So today's topic is principles of ecology. We know ecology will help us to understand animals more. We can research new species that are developing in different climates and their different conditions, and we can try to mold their behaviors too. So we can learn how they adapt to changing environment as well. So we can also research ways to help preserve our endangered species, which will diminish or we will damage, which will be, those are beneficial for us. So now the objective of this program is we will discuss during this program term ecology, relationship between organisms and its habitat, with a special mention of the human species. We will discuss different levels of ecological organizations, also habitat and niche, and what are the concept of species, and we will also discuss about basic idea of adaptation, evolution and extinction. In continuation, we will discuss about concept of population with reference to organisms, characteristics of population, that is size, growth, density and dispersal, demographic factors as well as community structure with ecological succession. So first we will talk about what is meant by ecology and who coined this term and the derivation of the term ecology. So answer can be in simple word as interrelated relationship of an organisms about abiotic and biotic factors of the environment, and the term ecology was coined by German biologist Ernst Haeckel in 1869, and this ecology word derived from it two Greek words. Oikos means home and logos means study. So now we will move to the next section, that is ecological level of organization. When we talk about ecological level of organization spectrum, it emphasizes the interaction of living and non-living component leading to the formation of any system at each level. Example we can take a community with its biotic component makes ecosystem. And concept of ecology may be defined as a scientific study of the relationship of living organisms with each other and with their environment. Or we can say emphasis on relationship between organisms or the component of the environment, namely biotic and abiotic component. So now look at the figure, that is ecological labels of organization. So we will start first step, individual to biosphere. So labels of organization from individual to biosphere in nature, it includes individual, community, individual, population, community, and ecosystem, then biome and biosphere. And second row dealt with labels of types of studies. So when we talk about organisms, organisms mean an individual or basic unit of the study. When we talk about population, population means a group of organisms consisting of a number of different populations that live in defined area and interact with each other. When we come to the community, community is a group of organisms consisting of a number of different species that live in an area and interact with each other. Next label is ecosystem, that is a community of organisms and their physical environment interacting as an ecological unit. Next we move to biomes, that is a fifth label of organization, a large community and unit characterized by a major vegetation type and associated faunas found in a specific climatic region that is known as biome. And this refers basically to terrestrial areas. Aquatic ecosystems are divided into distinct zones on the basis of the salinity. It comes the freshwater and marine. Next level of organization is biosphere, is a study of human activities affecting the earth like global warming, climate change, ozone hole and so on. Second label says types of study. When we study level of organization in the form of individual, population, community, ecosystem, biome and biosphere, so as a whole, so we should also know about the types of ecological studies as in a form of study of form, physiology, behavior, distribution and adaptation of an organism in relation to the environment. Study of interaction between population and interspecific relationship. Second, study of structure and composition of community and interspecific interaction between member of the community. Third, study of community in relation to the structure of its ecosystem, nutrients cycling, climate, energy flow. Now we move to the next section of this discussion is habitat and organisms. What does it mean? Habitat is a physical environment in which an organism lives, and each organism has particular requirement for their survival, and they live where the environment provides for all those needs. That is the basic need. We need water, food and shelter. So feature of the habitat can be represented by its structure component. You can see space, food, water and shelter. And earth has four major habitat: terrestrial or land, freshwater, estuarine and ocean. So you can see figure terrestrial, it includes grassland, forest, desert, water, freshwater and marine water and estuarine. So these are the major four types of habitats. A habitat may support many different species having similar requirement. We can take example in ocean. Single ocean may support, ocean habitat may support many aquatic organisms such as whale, seahorse, seal, phytoplanktons and many other kind of organisms. if we want to ask what is the habitat of tapeworm, so human gut is the habitat of a tapeworm, while rotting or bread or log a habitat of a fungus. So, in nature many species occupy the same habitat, but they perform different functions. This is because if two species occupy the same niche, they will compete with one another until one is displaced. So, niche functional characteristic of the species in its habitat is referred as a niche, in that they are in that common habitat. Niche is unique for a species, while many species share the habitat. No two species in a habitat can have the same niche. In nature, many species, as we know, occupy the same habitat, but they perform different function. So, functional characteristics of a species in its habitat is referred as a niche. So, habitat of a species is like its address, whereas niche can be thought of its profession, that is activities and response specific to the species. So, different species have, if we want to say habitat, address or home of an organism in which that is the place where it lives. The niche is an occupation of an organism in its community. So, here is an example of a tree. Tree is a habitat of several insects, where as each insect has different niche. Lacebug occupies top canopy of the tree. Moth larvae fed on the shoot serpentine leaf miner requires surface of the leaf for feeding, and the white grub tropic label is root of the tree. So, the term niche means sum of the all activities and relationship in a species by which it uses the resources in its habitat for its survival and reproduction. A niche is unique for a species, but while many species share the habitat. So, no two species in a habitat can have the same niche, as we already told. We can take another example, and that example can be vegetation of the forest. In forest, there are several types of vegetation: tall tree, short tree, shrub, bushes and grasses. All are part of the forest, but occupy different heights and they differ in their requirement for sunlight and nutrients so that they can survive together. The most important resources in the niche of animal are food and shelter. While that for plant is moisture and nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen, most important resource in the niche of animals, as we already told, food, and for plant they need moisture and nutrients for their survival. So, next figure shows niche of the human being. Human is in middle and their surroundings so many organisms. So, now we move to the next topic of today's discussion, that is adaptation. You know, or we can assume that coconut cannot grow in the desert, while the camel cannot survive in an ocean. So, how do they arise in nature? Species formation. Yes, every organism is suited to live in its particular environment. So, an adaptation is the appearance or behavior or structure or mode of life on an organism that allow it to survive in a particular environment. Desert animals have raised their body above the ground by having their long legs. Examples of basic adaptations help plants and animals to survive in their particular or respective environment. So, let us recall some examples of basic adaptations. For aquatic adaptation, presence of gills and fins in fish for aquatic life, In aquatic flowering plant, absence of wood formation is highly reduced. System are adaptations. Adaptations can be observed in structure, behavior, or in physiology of an organism have been produced, and adaptation have a genetic basis also. Adaptation have developed over many generations to help a species survive successfully in its environment. So, we will also discuss about adaptation for birds. So, adaptation of birds, shape of the bird's beak, thickness or thinness of fur, presence of feathers and wings in birds, evergreen and deciduous nature of trees, and presence or absence of thorn on leaves and stems. So, now we will move to the next section, that is species and variation. Species is defined as a group of similar populations of organisms whose members are capable of interbreeding and is to produce fertile offspring or children. A tiger, lion, lotus, rose, banana are the examples of different species. So, every species has a scientific name understood by people all over the world. Human beings belongs to species of Homo sapiens, and they are the only members of the same species can interbreed to produce fertile offsprings. Every species has its own set of genetic characteristics that make the species unique and different from other species. However, species are generally composed of a number of distinct populations which freely interbreed even though they appear to be different in appearance. Next is variation. We find differences in color of skin, type of hair, curl and straight eye, color, blood type among different ethnic groups represent variation within human species. So, similarly, different shapes and size of cow, dog, brinjal, cat are the example of variation within each of these species. If we were talk about variation in plants, so we see tall and short pea varieties, various types and shape of brinjal exhibit among these plant species. Variations are produced as a result of transmutation. So, competition and natural selection determines as to which variations will succeed and survive. Those variations that are enable a species to survive in a struggle for existing are encouraged and promoted. In plants, one can observe wide variation in size and shapes of different species, for fruits and vegetables too. So, now we come to the next section, that is evolution. Valid theory of evolution was propounded by Charles Darwin and Alfred Wallace in 1859. This theory has been extended in the light of progress in genetics and is known as New Darwinism. According to this theory, organisms tend to produce more offsprings that can be supported by the environment. They produce in far largest number that can be supported by nature. Natural selection selects among the variations, that is genes that help the organisms to adapt to its environment. So, such organisms get to grow up to adulthood and reproduce, thus pass on their genes or suitable adaptations to the next generation. So, evolution results in adaptation and diversity of species. So, next we talk about the speciation. Speciation is the process by which new species arise, and evolution is the mechanism by which speciation is brought about. So, a species comprises of many populations. Different populations often get isolated due to geographic barriers, examples mountains, river and ocean too. So when a population that was interbreeding otherwise gets separated into two completely isolated populations by a barrier which prevents their interbreeding and gene exchange. So ecological isolation caused by differences in temperature, humidity, pH in the environment of the two populations, and mutation occurs randomly in isolated population, giving rise to new variation within each subpopulation of these mutations, those that help to adapt to the environment that are reproduced in greater number due to natural selection. We can say other words, so no two environments are identical. Natural selection pressure also operates in different ways depending upon local conditions such as climate, disease and predator also. Natural selection affects each subspecies in different ways, so the different variations get selected or established. With passage of time, the subpopulations become very different and get isolated reproductively and can no longer interbreed. So later when the barriers is removed, the subpopulations are still not able to interbreed and are still not able and become two distinct species. And this is an example of formation of a new species or speciation. So famous example is for speciation is two squirrel, kebab squirrel and Albert squirrel. An example of speciation is seen in the two species of squirrels, kebab squirrels and Albert squirrels that live opposite side of the Grand Canyon. These two squirrel populations become separated species about 1 million years ago due to the changed course of river Colorado. The original population was split by this river and the environment was on the two sides is very different. So now come to the variation of an origin of new species. You can see different bird species, beaks of these species. So adaptations and these are variations found due to the adaptations. On the Hawaiian island, a single finch-like ancestor gave rise to about 40 different species of honey creepers. Each is specialized in bill shape and size as selected by its particular microhabitat and diet. Colors may have evolved in response to sexual selection. Ever since life evolved on Earth, new species better suited or adapted to the environment have appeared and older, less successful forms have died or become extinct. So extinction is generally a natural occurrence. So it means extinction means dying out of a variety of or a species. The primary reason for these extinction is environmental change or biological competition. Extinction occurs when species cannot evolve fast enough to cope up with the changes taking place in the environment. So extinction and speciation go side by side. Less successful forms become extinct. It is generally natural occurrence. Primary reason is environmental change or biological competition. Species become extinct when they cannot evolve with the changing environment fast enough. So humans too contribute by deforestation, environmental degradation, and we can say human interference is enhancing the natural process of extinction of species. So we will take a short break. After break, we will continue this discussion on principles of ecology.
कभी आपने सोचा है कि आप वर्ष भर पढ़ाई करते हैं कक्षा में होने वाले प्रत्येक मासिक या त्रैमासिक टेस्ट को सहजता से उत्तीर्ण भी कर लेते हैं। लेकिन ऐसा क्या होता है कि जब परीक्षाएं आती हैं तो हम कुछ परेशान से हो जाते हैं, कुछ घबराने सा लगते हैं। क्या परीक्षा के इस भय से हम स्वयं को मुक्त कर सकते हैं? क्या इसके लिए कोई विधि, कोई मार्गदर्शक है? जीवन अनंत संभावनाओं से भरा है, इसीलिए परीक्षाओं से घबराने की आवश्यकता बिल्कुल भी नहीं है। परीक्षा एक निरंतर चलने वाली प्रक्रिया है। इनके चलते आप अपने जीवन को क्षति न पहुंचाएं, धैर्य से काम लें। जब हम हंसते मुस्कुराते हैं तो अपने आप हम सहज और तनाव मुक्त हो जाते हैं। इसीलिए परीक्षा के समय हमेशा प्रसन्न चित्त रहिए, चिंता छोड़िए और चुनौतियों से लड़िए। समय सारणी बनाकर नियोजित रूप से परीक्षा की तैयारी करिए। समय का प्रबंधन और सदुपयोग करना सीखिए। तनाव मुक्त हो जब हम परीक्षा में स्वयं से ही अनुस्पर्धा करते हैं, तब हम निश्चित ही बेहतर कर पाते हैं। इसी बेहतर को करने में NIOS की परीक्षा प्रणाली शिक्षार्थी का सतत सहयोग करती है। समय प्रबंधन के लिए शिक्षार्थी पूर्ण रूप से स्वतंत्र रहता है। वर्ष में 2 बार होने वाली मुख्य परीक्षाएं इसमें बहुत सहयोग करती हैं। इसके अतिरिक्त कभी भी परीक्षा देने की सुविधा शिक्षार्थी को बारंबार उनके समयानुसार परीक्षा देने के अवसरों को बढ़ा देती है। परीक्षा की तैयारी पूरी होने पर ही NIOS का शिक्षार्थी परीक्षा देता है। अर्जित अंकों का ट्रांसफर ऑफ क्रेडिट, 5 वर्षों में 9 बार परीक्षा के अवसर, दिव्यांग शिक्षार्थियों को अतिरिक्त समय व सह लेखक की सुविधा, मूल्यांकन में गोपनीयता के लिए बारकोड व OMR का उपयोग, क्षेत्रीय भाषाओं में उत्तर लिखने की स्वतंत्रता देशव्यापी शिक्षार्थियों को NIOS द्वारा दी जा रही है। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी की अनुपम कृति एग्जाम वॉरियर्स निश्चित ही प्रेरणा बोध से भरी है। आप भय मुक्त होकर पढ़ाई करते रहें। लगातार अध्ययन से आप अवश्य अपने स्वर्णिम भविष्य का निर्माण कर पाएंगे।
Labels of organization, habitat and niche, adaptations, speciation and extinction. So now we will move to the next section of this discussion, that is population. So we have already talked So, how do we define population? As a group of freely interbreeding individuals of the same species present in a specific area at a given time. So, there a figure, first is individual and a group of individual is population. So, we take a small example for human beings. We are living in a city and their population is 5 lakhs. So, which means 5 lakhs humans are living in a city. So, however, all populations of human beings in any part of the world constitute the species of human, Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens is a scientific name of human. A population has traits of its own which are different from those of the individual forming the population. An individual is born and die, but a population continues. It may change in size depending on birth and death rates of the population. An individual is either male or female, younger or old, but a population has a sex ratio and age structure, which means the ratio of male to female in the population and the various age groups into which the population may be divided. So, we will discuss about the characteristics of the population. Any characteristics of any population depend on density of the population, natality or birth rate, mortality or death rate, dispersal, biotic potential, age distribution, dispersion and growth form. So, we will discuss one by one. First, we will take density. Number of individual or per unit area at a given time is termed as population density. It varies from time to time and place to place. For example, we see more plants and insects during the monsoon season in our garden. It is measured by taking random samples from a measured area of a particular dimension. This is called quadrate from that reason for animals like tiger, lion or deer. So, pug marks are more useful to determine the actual number of such animals, and each cat has a unique and different pug mark. You can see the figure. There are other methods for count of human populations called census, and this census is carried out by every 10 years and each individual is physically counted. Next is natality or birth rate, the rate at which new individuals are born and added to a population under given environmental conditions is called natality. Birth, hatching, germination, vegetative propagation cause an increase in the number of individuals in a population. Next characteristic is mortality or death rate, loss of individual from a particular population due to death under a given condition is called mortality. It is obtained by calculating the death rate in a population. Dispersal. This refers to movement of individuals of a population in a region on a permanent basis is termed immigration, while immigration refers to the movement of individuals into a new area where dispersal includes both emigration and immigration of individuals. When it is out of a population, both these movements affect the population of a region. The population of a region is affected by dispersal. Active migration is not impossible in plants through seeds may be dispersed over long distance by wind, water and animals. So, we can say that density of any population basically depend upon 4 factors, that is natality, mortality, immigration and emigration. Thus, density of a population derived as D is equal to N plus I minus GR plus E, where D stands for density, NA natality, I immigration, E emigration and DR dispersal. So, emigration and migration, when we talk about emigration, movement of individual of a population out of a region on a permanent basis is known as emigration. Immigration refers to the movement of individual into a new area where dispersal includes both emigration and immigration of individuals. So, population of a region is affected by dispersal, we have already told. So, next characteristic is biotic potential, is the rate at which a species reproduces with unlimited conditions. This means that the species is living in ideal condition with no limit to the number of food resources, no predator present and no threat of disease. Next is the age distribution, and population may be broadly divided into 3 age groups: pre-reproductive age comprising of juvenile individual or children, reproductive a group consisting of individual capable of reproduction, and post-reproductive a group contains aged individuals which are incapable of reproduction. So, age distribution of population can be pyramid shape, bell shape or urn shape. A population pyramid illustrates the age and sex structure of a country's population and may provide insight about political and social stability as well as economic development. The population is distributed along the horizontal axis with male shows on the left side and the female on the right side. Male and female populations are broken down into 5 age groups, represent as horizontal bar along the vertical axis, the youngest age group at the bottom and the oldest at the top. Shape of the population pyramid gradually evolves over time based on fertility, motility and international migration trends. Next characteristic is sex ratio. It is an important aspect of population. It refers to the ratio between female and male individual in a population. Next is population growth. Population have characteristic pattern of growth with time depicted by growth curves. And 2 basic forms are identified, that is J shape and sigmoid or J shape form, J expansional type. It is also called density independent curve. It is generally typical of a species which reproduces rapidly and are greatly affected by season, fluctuation of environmental factors such as light, temperature, rainfall, and types of growth curve shows a rapidly increasing population density in as exponential progression when there is a abundant supply of resources. After reducing the peak, there is sudden decline due to environmental or other factors. For example, insects which show explosive growth during the monsoon and then abruptly disappear due to the end of the season. Similarly, forest fire, drought, floods, storm may reduce the population drastically. On the other hand, most of the organisms show S-shaped curve where resources are limited except the next level of organization. So, that we took up to communities and their characteristics. So, our next topic is community. Community refers, or biotic community refers to the population of different kind of organisms living together and sharing the same habitat. It includes several populations of plants and animals of a particular area which associated with each other. For example, a human being lives in a particular area and interacts with other members of the family. A group of population of different species in a given area is referred as biotic community. Characteristic patterns of a community is termed as a structure of the community and is determined by the roles played by its various population, the range of its various populations, the type of area that is inhabited by the population of the community, the diversity of species in the community. So, now we move to the next section, that is community diversity. The interaction between various populations of the community inhabiting the area. So, members of the community also actively interact with their environment. In a community, only those plants and animals survive which are adapted to a particular environment, that is in the form of adaptation. Climate determines the types of environment, hence the type of organisms in a community. So, for example, it is a climate of the area which determines whether the given area becomes a desert or a forest. So, different kind of animals present in a community represents its species diversity. Species composition differs from one community to another. Even in the same community, there may be a seasonal variation in species composition. The community created by man, such as lawns or crop communities, are man-made communities, and these are relatively simple and consist of only one species, or opposed to a natural community characterized by a large number of species. So, man-made communities are very unstable and require great deal of care and constant manipulation and maintenance. So, next we will talk about stratification. It refers to the vertical layers of vegetation. Tropical forest represents a good example of a vertical stratification. In most tropical rainforests, up to 5 distinct strata or layers of vegetation can be formed. This include from the forest floor to the top, and you can see the figure. Ground level or ground layer of mosses and liverbirds associated with dead leaves and other substance rich in organic matter. Second layer is herb or grass layer or short shrub layer. Next, tall shrub layer. Next, layer of the under stories of short trees. Layer of canopy of lower trees, and lastly, overstory or emergent tree layer forms tall tree. So, bottom layer, lower layer, middle layer, and then upper layer. So, plants and animals of each layer differ in size, behavior, and adaptation from those of the other layers. To minimize the competition and conflict among the member of the community, stratification is a practical strategy to minimize the interspecific competition. As in tropical forest canopy dominates the area, they modify the light and moisture for the shorter trees growing under them, which in turn determines the conditions for the ground vegetation. Vertical stratification of the plant community determines the structure of the community. Different layers are occupied by different plant species and animals. So, community characteristics, species diversity is an important attribute to a community. The different kind of organisms present in a community represent the species diversity. Species composition or diversity differ from one community to another, and even in the same community there may be seasonal variation in species composition. Species diversity influences the stability of a community, can return to its original condition after being disturbed by several ways. Diversity is calculated both by the number of species and the relative abundance of each species. Relative abundance is measure of the relative proportion of different species occurring in the community, and greater the number of species and more even their distribution, the greater is the species diversity. So, now we move to the next section, that is ecological succession. Biotic communities are dynamic in nature and change over a period of time. Process by which communities and plant and animal species in an area are replaced or changed into another over a period of time is known as ecological succession. Biotic and biotic component are involved in this change. This change is brought about both by the activities of the community as well as by the physical environment in that particular area. Physical environment often influences the nature, direction, rate, and optimal limit of changes, and during the succession both plant and animal communities undergo change. So, there are two types of succession, that is primary and secondary succession. Primary succession takes place over a bare or unoccupied areas such as rocks, outcrop, newly formed deltas and sand dunes, emerging volcanoes and lava flows, as well as glacial moraines where no community has existed previously. So, plants that invade first bare land, which soil is initially absent, are called pioneer species. The assemblage of pioneer plant is collectively called pioneer community, and pioneer species generally show high growth rate but short lifespan. Primary succession is much more difficult to observe than secondary succession because there are relatively very few places on earth that do not already have community of organisms. Furthermore, primary succession takes a very long time as compared to secondary succession, as the soil is to be formed during primary succession, while secondary succession starts in an area where soil is already present. So, pioneer community that initially inhabits a bare area is called pioneer community, and binary community after some time gets replaced by another community with different species combination. Second community gets replaced by the third, and this process continues sequence wise, in which a community replaced previous by another community. So next we will talk about serial and climax community. Each transitional community that is formed and replaced during succession is called a stage of succession or a serial community. The terminal stage of succession forms the community which is called as climax community. Climax community is stable, mature, more complex and long lasting. The entire sequence of community in a given area succeedingly each other during the course of succession is termed shear. Animals of such a community also exhibit succession which to a great extent is determined by plasma succession. However, animals of such successional stages are also influenced by the types of animals that are able to migrate from neighboring communities. So, climax community, as long as it is undisturbed, remains relatively stable in dynamic equilibrium with the prevailing climate and habitat factors. Succession that occurs on land where moisture content is low, for example, on a bare rock is known as xerac. Succession that takes place in a water body like pond or lake is called hydrarch. Secondary succession is the development of a community which forms after the existing natural vegetation that constitute a community is removed, disturbed or destroyed by a natural event like hurricane or forest fire, or by human related events like tilling or harvesting lands. So, biological community of an area or ecosystem is a complex network of interaction. So, interaction that occurs among different individuals of the same species is called intraspecific interaction, and interaction among individuals of different species in a community is termed as interspecific interaction. So, interaction between organisms belonging to the same trophic level often involve competition. Individuals of population may compete for food, space and mates. For example, if a mouse has been eaten by a cat, so other cats competing for this resource would have one less mouse to prey on. Snake, another predator of the mice, would also have fewer mice to eat during the night if the cat has succeeded. Direct competition, though, between the cat and the snake is not much, as they prey at different times. They also eat a variety of different foods, so competition may be intraspecific as well as interspecific. Interspecific relationship may be direct or close as between a lion and deer, or indirect and remote as between an elephant and a beetle. This is because interaction between the two species need not be through direct contact. Due to connected nature of ecosystem, species may affect each other through intermediary such as shared resources or common enemies. So, specific terms are applied to interspecific interaction depending upon whether the interaction is beneficial, harmful or neutral to individual of a species. So, specific interaction may be positive and negative. It again, positive interaction is protocooperation, commensalism and mutualism, and neutral, while negative interaction includes amensalism, parasitism, predation and competition. So, we will talk about little bit about all these type of interaction. First, amensalism is a relationship in which a chemical compound produced by one organism as part of its normal metabolism has a negative effect on growth or survival on another organism which comes in contact. It is especially a population interaction in which one organism is harmed while the other remains unaffected. Amensalism is converse of commensalism. Amensal inhibits the growth of interacting population. Mutualism example is root nodules of which is formed by rhizobium bacteria on the roots of several legume species. When nodules are present, legumes can fix nitrogen from the air, satisfying their own nitrogen nutrition requirement and providing excess nitrogen to non-legume plant species. Next is parasitism. Nematodes or roundworm are incredibly common animals. Many are parasites and live in the intestine of other animals such as birds and mammals. One species inhabits the gut of the sperm whale. Many are serious parasites to humans such as Bougaria bancrofti, which causes elephantiasis. In an ecosystem, predation is a biological interaction where a predator feeds on its prey. The act of predation often results in the death of the prey and the eventual absorption of the prey's tissue through consumption. Next is competition. It occurs when two populations or species both needs of vital resources that is in short supply. The vital resource could be food, water, shelter, nesting site, mates or space. So, such competition can be interspecific and intraspecific. Interspecific competition is an interaction in population ecology whereby members of the same species compete for limited resources. This leads to a reduction in fitness for both individuals. By contrast, interspecific competition occurs when members of different species compete for a shared resources. So, members of the same species have very similar resources requirement, whereas different species have a less resource overlap, resulting in a stronger interspecific competition force than interspecific competition. Commensalism example is remora and its host a zebra shark. Shark and suckerfish, sharks are larger in size and suckerfish attach themselves itself on shark and feed on the leftover food of shark. Presence of sucker is an adaptation of remora. Mutualism is a relationship between two or more species where both the species derive a mutual benefit in terms of increasing their carrying capacity. Xanthoparamelia lavicola, a foliage lichen on basilic rock. There is a table which shows possible biological interaction between two species. You can see amensalism, one species is inhabited while the other species is unaffected. Predation, prey relationship, one species benefits while the other species, second species is harmed and inhabited. Parasitism, beneficial to one species and harmful to the other species. Competition, adversely affect both species. Amensalism, one species is inhibited while the other species is unaffected. Predation, prey relationship. Second, these are positive, and neutralism, neither species affected or the others. So, before we wrap up, we would like to recap the main points what we have learned. Ecology may be defined as a scientific study of the relationship between each other and with their environment. The term ecology was coined by Ernest Haeckel in 1869. It encompasses study of individual, organism, population, community, ecosystem, biosphere and biome and biosphere, which forms the various levels of ecological organization. Habitat is a physical environment in which an organism lives. Niche refers to the functional position of a species in its habitat. Species is a group of population whose individual members are capable of interbreeding with each other to produce a fertile offspring. Evolution is a change which gives rise to the new species. Mutation and recombination are sources of genetic variation or differences in the genetic make up our gene pool of a species. Natural selection is a mechanism proposed by Darwin and Wallace which interact with variation to cause greater reproduction of these genes which help in adaptive to the environment. Extinction occurs when a species cannot evolve fast enough to cope with the changes taking place in their environment. Many species have gone extinct during geological history of the earth. Fossils are the preserved remains of animals, plants and other organisms that lived in the geological past. Thus, evolution results in adaptation. It leads to speciation or formation of new species. Isolation is a factor supports specimen. There are two types of isolation, geographical and reproductive isolation. Many species, however, have been lost forever and not a single individual belonging to these species which exist. Once exist now at present, extinction may occur due to catastrophic events in nature or due to human activities. Population is a group of interbreeding different individuals found in a specific time of a particular geographical area, and there are characteristics: population density, birth rate, death rate, dispersion, migration, immigration, age distribution and sex ratio. And ecological succession is the successive growth of primary succession occurs in an area where there is no previous community. Secondary succession forms an existing natural vegetation. Biotic interaction refers to the interaction taking place between individuals belonging to the same species. Examples are competition, predation, parasitism, mutualism, symbiosis, commensalism and mutualism. So, this is all about principles of ecology. We will come again to meet you in a new program of environmental science. Till then, goodbye and thank you.